Russia sits on top of one of the largest oil reserves on Earth. It pumps millions of barrels a day. And right now, in 83 of its regions, drivers are queuing for hours to put 20 liters in the tank. Hold those two facts next to each other, because they shouldn't be able to coexist. An ocean of oil underground, an empty pump above it. In Crimea, petrol is rationed, 20 liters per customer. In 6 regions, you can only buy fuel on even or odd days, depending on your license plate. Around 50 million people, roughly a third of the country, are living inside some version of this. So how does that happen? How does an energy superpower run out of the one thing it's famous for? The answer isn't that Russia is running out of oil. Russia has plenty of oil. The answer is that oil, on its own, is useless. Here's the thing almost nobody says out loud. You cannot pour crude oil into a car. It won't burn in your engine. Crude is a thick, black soup of hundreds of different hydrocarbons all mixed together, some light as gas, some heavy as tar. To get petrol out of it, you have to take that soup apart. That's what a refinery is. Not a storage tank, a factory. You heat the crude until it vaporizes, and the different hydrocarbons rise to different heights and condense at different levels. Light fractions near the top, petrol, jet fuel. Heavy ones at the bottom, diesel, fuel oil, asphalt. But nature doesn't give you the mix you want. Crude yields far too much heavy sludge and nowhere near enough petrol. So refineries do something cleverer. They take the heavy molecules and break them apart into lighter ones. That process is called cracking, and the machine that does it is a catalytic cracker. So the chain runs like this. Oil in the ground, crude out of the well. Refinery turns crude into fuel, fuel into the tank. Ukraine isn't attacking the first link. It can't. The oil is underground and there's too much of it. It's attacking the third, the converter. And that's the vulnerability. Russia has thousands of oil wells spread across 9 time zones. But it has only about 40 major refineries. You cannot hide a refinery. It's a square kilometer of steel that took years to build, and it sits exactly where the map says it sits, every single day. It gets narrower than that. Inside each refinery, the whole operation funnels through a handful of critical units: the distillation column, the hydrocracker, the catalytic cracker. You don't have to flatten the plant. Hit the cracker, and the refinery stops making petrol. And you can't improvise a refinery. You can drill a new well in months. A refinery takes years and billions, and it needs exactly the technology Russia is now cut off from. There is no workaround that arrives before winter. Since May, 10 of Russia's largest refineries have been struck. The furthest, Omsk, in Siberia, is roughly 2,500 kilometers from Ukraine. That is not a border skirmish. That's a weapon reaching almost to Mongolia. The estimates of the damage vary a lot, and we'll be honest about that. The International Energy Agency says more than a fifth of Russia's refining capacity is offline. Ukraine's general staff claims nearly 43%. The Financial Times reported up to 40%. Take the low end, a fifth of a nation's fuel production, gone, and it's still enormous. But here's the part that turns a bad month into a structural crisis. Normally, you'd repair it. A refinery gets damaged, you order the parts, you rebuild, you're back in months. Russia can't. Because Russia's refineries aren't really Russian. Over 20 years of modernization, they were built around Western technology, the process designs, the control systems, the catalysts, the precision rotating machinery. Reporting indicates Western firms supplied technology to essentially all of Russia's 40 biggest refineries. And here's what makes that sting. Russia spent the 2010s modernizing these exact refineries, with Western licenses and Western engineering. Precisely so it could stop shipping out raw crude and start exporting finished fuel. That upgrade was the price. It is now the vulnerability. The very units that made Russia a fuel exporter are the units it cannot replace. And after 2022, sanctions cut that supply off. So when a drone breaks a catalytic cracker today, there is no replacement cracker to order. At one refinery, a cracker has reportedly been down since a failure in January. And fixing it doesn't mean a repair. It means replacing an entire unit that the people who designed it will no longer sell you. But surely, you're thinking, Russia can just buy the parts somewhere else. It has tried. Reporting says one Russian oil giant asked Chinese firms to fix a cracker at its Nizhny Novgorod refinery. But this is the thing about a catalytic cracker. It isn't a part you swap out. It's a proprietary system, licensed, designed and calibrated by the company that built it. Chinese engineers can build a new one. What they can't do is quickly rebuild yours. That's the multiplier. Every strike that would normally be temporary becomes something closer to permanent. The damage doesn't heal between attacks, it stacks, and the drones keep coming. And you can measure what this is costing. In June, Russia's refineries processed about 4.1 million barrels a day, roughly 28% below their 5-year average, and about 35% below what they were built to handle. Analysts put the lost earnings at up to $100 million a day. Then there's the maths of the fight itself, and it's brutal. A Ukrainian deep strike drone costs somewhere between $20,000 and $100,000. A single interceptor missile fired to stop it can cost around $300,000. So Russia spends more shooting them down than Ukraine spends sending them, and every drone that gets through hits infrastructure worth billions. And Russia can't simply defend everything. Air defense has to cover a country spanning 9 time zones, and the drone only has to find one gap, one night. The defender has to be right every time. The attacker has to be right once. So now look at what Russia actually does today. It still exports crude oil, the wells are fine, the oil flows. But it has banned exports of diesel, banned exports of petrol and jet fuel. And it has started importing petrol, reportedly tens of thousands of tons from India, with plans for far more. Read that again, because it's the whole story in one sentence. One of the world's great oil exporters is now importing petrol. It has the oil. It has lost the ability to convert it. There's a quieter admission too. Moscow has allowed some refineries to drop their fuel quality standard from -€5 down to -€3 through the end of this year. When you can't make enough good petrol, you change the definition of good petrol. And the people who feel this first are not the ones who chose it. They're farmers who can't fuel a harvester at harvest. Drivers waiting in the heat for a rationed 20 liters. Families in towns where the pumps are simply dry. Whatever you think of this war, they didn't pick the target list. And it doesn't stay inside Russia's borders. When a country that supplies a meaningful share of the world's diesel stops exporting it, that supply doesn't vanish quietly. It comes out of a global market that everyone buys from. Which is why a drone hitting a tower in Siberia can eventually show up as a number on a pump in your town. So what happens from here? Refining capacity that can't be repaired doesn't recover between attacks, it only degrades. And the calendar isn't kind. Harvest needs diesel. Winter needs heating oil. Every month the strikes continue. The gap between what Russia can pump and what Russia can actually use gets wider. So is Russia losing? Not on the map. The front line has barely moved. But this was never really about the map. It's about whether a war economy can keep converting what it owns into what it needs. And that machine, the one that turns oil into fuel and fuel into an army that moves, is the machine that's breaking. We follow the mechanics behind the headlines, how these things actually work and why they matter to you. Subscribe, and we'll keep making sense of it together.